In many of my videos, I referred to Plato's theory of forms, and I realized that there is a specific aspect of this theory, one specific word that Plato uses when describing the forms, that people usually take the wrong way. In fact, once you see how simple it is, and how wrong many people are by inventing all kinds of obscurities to explain it, when I came to see this, I have not stopped laughing since. It is so simple and blunt that it is almost marvelous how people take it wrongly, and how much disdain they develop for the theory because they see it through a completely wrong and complicated way. This statement by Plato is so blunt and superficial, yet it created so much debate and so many complicated theories about how to understand it throughout the history of philosophy that this might be the greatest irony in the history of human thinking. This is actually the most superficial and the most direct possible statement by Plato. And everyone, I will not say everyone, but I have never seen a person explain it in the way Plato meant it, in a direct, literal, most blunt, and most superficial sense possible. Even without thinking about it deeply, you would get a better understanding of the theory than through all the history of human thinking and wrestling with the meaning of this theory of forms. People are inventing all kinds of mathematical realms, different dimensions, and various explanations, and criticism has been directed at Plato for this simple fact that he says that forms are unchanging. This is so simple and so stupid that the fact that people take it so seriously and argue so vigorously about it actually convinced me that what we call intelligence is actually stupidity, while what we call stupidity is real intelligence. This is what I think from now on, and you will think this as well when I explain this to you. I even started thinking about whether Plato deliberately infused his dialogues knowing that it will create this irony in understanding, something Socrates was well known for during his life. In many of my videos, I explained how Plato tells us that forms are unchanging. However, he does not deny change. Many people understand this as Plato believing that everything must be defined according to a perfect mathematical blueprint with rigidly defined definitions. This is not what Plato ever says in any of his dialogues. He never provides any mathematical or rigidly defined definitions of the forms. He just says that they are defined by what they are. And this is absolutely crucial for understanding what we want to achieve in this video. This fact alone is about to tell us everything we need to know about what Plato means by unchanging. Plato never says that forms obstruct change. They provide the material for change. One single universal, unchanging form can be expressed in an endless number of changing ways in its particular forms. I truly mean this. One unchanging form is expressed through change in countless ways. There is no number that we can give in order to define how much. The number is infinite. For example, let us take a mathematical form like a pyramid. In Plato's divided line, mathematical reality is within the reality of forms, but it is within a lower reality of forms. The divided line is divided into 4 parts. 2 are forms or mind-like, and 2 are sensory or physical. Although all of them exist as one reality, this separation is only meant to show what is happening. Of the 2 upper form divisions, one is mathematical, the Pythagorean reality of mathematics, and the other is the higher forms, the Parmenidean reality of being, which contains higher forms like justice or beauty. So let us take the mathematical form of a pyramid. A pyramid can have 3 or more sides, however, this is completely irrelevant. We are imagining here a pyramid itself. You can imagine it with however many sides. A pyramid has a specific shape, and that is what we are focusing on as what I believe to be the simplest example to explain how Plato saw this. A pyramid is a form that defines a specific shape, and every time something embodies this shape, it is a pyramid. This is why the pyramid is unchanging, because only this single shape is a pyramid. This is what it means when Plato says that forms are unchanging. There is only one of each kind. This is all that we need to know when Plato says forms are unchanging. There is no more to it. The definition of forms being unchanging means that there is only one of such kind. Only a pyramid is a pyramid. When it is a cube, it is no longer a pyramid, because only a specific shape is called a pyramid. We can call multiple objects pyramids, but only one shape is truly the shape of a pyramid. That is the pyramid. This is why the pyramid is unchanging in its ideal dimension. It does not mean that the pyramid has unchanging proportions. What this tells us is that only one shape is this pyramid shape. This is why it is unchanging. Because only one shape is a pyramid shape, nothing else needs to be added here to explain why it is unchanging. This single form of a pyramid can be expressed through countless proportions. The form does not define proportions. The less significant aspect of this theory is that the form of a pyramid can have subforms or ideal archetypes that exist within it. Plato says that forms exist within forms. So a pyramid can have sub-archetypes like three-sided, four-sided, or hexagonal pyramid. All of them are subcategories within the archetype of a pyramid. It is good to point this out in order to clarify position more clearly. All these are ideal or archetypal ideas. However, all of them share in the idea of the pyramid that contains within itself its basic archetypal or ideal power of being that each pyramid contains within its definition, and which is necessary for it to be considered a pyramid. The form simply means that one thing is a pyramid, and this is why it is unchanging, because nothing else can be a pyramid except this one unchanging thing. I do not mean this as one specifically defined object. The only part that is defined in the ideal part of the pyramid is just the fact that it is a pyramid, nothing else. It is not defined how many sides, how big or tall, or how wide it is. Ideas or forms do not have clearly defined proportions. Idea is just what it is, and that's it. It is the most basic form of what it means when something is considered a pyramid in all its possible expressions. This is what I am referring to when I say pyramid is only one unchanging thing. It is this most basic idea of what makes all possible pyramids what they are. This one unchanging thing can be expressed in multiple ways. It can have endlessly changing particular forms. One can be bigger, one can be smaller, one can be wider. You see where I am going. It can be expressed in endless ways. Its height alone can be expressed in literally endless numbers of ways. There is no number that can express all of its variation or change even in one single department. This one unchanging form, the pyramid, can be expressed in endless and countless different changing variations only when referring to its height. And that is without even speaking about its other proportions and qualities. It can be expressed in various colors, materials, and countless different ways, and each of these countless ways can have countless combinations. But if you ask, wouldn't this mean that the pyramid is just some empty space or blueprint that goes through change? The answer is no. The idea of a pyramid is unchanging because the thing that goes through change is not the ideal part of a pyramid. The ideal part of a pyramid is always a pyramid. It cannot be anything else, and this is why it must be unchanging. There is only one of it. It is what it is. It cannot become anything else. As soon as it becomes something else, it is no longer a pyramid, and this cannot happen to the idea of a pyramid. It is always what it is. This is why it is unchanging. It is an idea. So once the particular pyramid collapses, it stops being a pyramid, and we know this because idea of a pyramid is always what it is. There is one meaning for what it means for something to be a pyramid. You must understand that these changing forms that embody the archetype or idea of a pyramid are not the idea itself. They contain the idea and are defined by the idea of a pyramid. But as soon as they change their form, if a pyramid breaks, for example, they are no longer a pyramid. We know they are no longer a pyramid because a pyramid has its specific form, and only this one form is a pyramid. This one form does not restrict change. Unchanging simply means that it is only one thing or one meaning that is a pyramid, and nothing else. Beauty is not some higher mathematical reality. Beauty is only one thing, and this one thing is unchanging because it is what it is. Yes, many things can be beautiful, but all of them are beautiful because all of them have something in common, which is beauty. And just like a pyramid, it can be expressed in countless and countless ways, and it will always be one thing, which is beauty. It does not mean that beauty is some defined blueprint that is strictly defined in some mathematical heaven. It simply means that there is only one thing that we call beauty, and this one thing is beauty. The fact that beauty is expressed in countless ways does not change the fact that beauty is always beautiful. It cannot be anything else, and that is all Plato is saying. This one fact, this single point, is what people do not understand. Again and again, I have seen people on YouTube explaining how beauty is some heavenly defined proportion or mathematically defined definition. This is complete nonsense. If you find me one single sentence where Plato says that the idea of beauty is some kind of mathematical proportion, I will stop making these videos and I will never speak about Plato again. People are so persistent in trying to distort what the texts say. I do not understand this. Why do people do this? I will not say that I have read every philosopher. I have not. In fact, what I have read is a very small circle of philosophers that I am interested in. However, all of them, and I mean absolutely all of them, do not correspond to what people tell you, to the mainstream academically accepted standard position. Plato's theory of forms is actually the worst of all. It is by far the most distorted thing in the world. It is precisely the opposite of what Plato wrote. Everything is the opposite. Yes, they use the same words that Plato used. Forms are unchanging. But when they go on explaining and defining what this means, we encounter all kinds of obscurities and distortions. Forms are unchanging simply means that there is only one of them. Only one thing is beauty, one idea, and when this idea is reflected in some particular thing, the thing is beautiful. This is all it means. It does not mean that the thing has some magical power from heaven. It simply means that it is beautiful, and that is it, no more. This is all we need to know. Beauty is beauty, and things can be beautiful. This is all we need to know. It does not mean that beauty is mathematically defined. Mathematically defined things can express beauty, but beauty is beauty. It is not mathematical. It just is what it is, and that is it. This is what idea means. It means that something like beauty or a pyramid is always recognized for what it is. Beauty is beautiful, and a pyramid is a pyramid. The fact that they can be expressed in countless forms does not change that ideal part, that idea that beauty is always beautiful and a pyramid is always a pyramid. That is all that we need from the statement that forms are unchanging. Plato does not invent some kind of unknown realities. Plato is the most realist philosopher in history. Everything that Plato ever spoke about must be taken as simple, literal facts. Plato only spoke about what we can experience directly. He never invented some concept or abstraction. Beauty is an idea that we grasp with reason, and it is always what it is. This is what an unchanging idea means. It means that the thing is always what it is. When Plato says forms are unchanging, he means that each thing contains an idea that defines its being, and this idea is unchanging. A pyramid is always a pyramid. It cannot become a square, and this is the unchanging aspect of every pyramid. This shape, this archetypal power that defines what it is. The fact that each pyramid is different has no effect on the unchanging fact that all of them are pyramids, that all of them contain the same unchanging aspect of what makes them pyramids. This unchanging aspect, this fact that we conclude is a pyramid and that it cannot become a square, is the idea or form. So what is the unchanging aspect here? It is the fact that a pyramid is always of the same shape, and it cannot be of any different shape, because if it were, it would become something else. However, there is another way a pyramid can change. It can change and have multiple expressions while at the same time remaining a pyramid in all these different expressions, like what we see here on the screen for example. So wouldn't this clearly prove that idea of the pyramid can clearly change? The answer is still no, indeed. The fact that the idea of the pyramid can be expressed in countless different ways is actually not the refutation, but the greatest proof for the notion that the idea of the pyramid is unchanging. If we can see various different objects, with different proportions, different number of sides, all of them are completely different in every respect, except for one single thing. There is only one fact that connects them all, and which has exactly the same meaning even while maintaining all these differences in every possible respect, and this is the fact that all of them are pyramids. This is why the idea of the pyramid is unchanging, because even in all its changing forms it remains unchanging in a sense that it is what it is, a pyramid. This is the idea, this part that even in change remains what it is, and this is what Plato refers to when he talks about the unchanging forms. In this way, idea of the pyramid always remains a pyramid no matter what, whether it is expressed through change or not. Therefore, it is unchanging, it is always of the same nature, this shape is what it is, and that is it. You can then ask how is it unchanging if we see that things in reality change. Pyramids get destroyed, and they are no longer pyramids. A pyramid can be changed through manual labor. It can become smaller or bigger. It can be transformed into a cube by cutting its top and leveling it on its sides. Plato wouldn't disagree with this statement. With the fact that pyramid can transform or be destroyed, however, he would actually understand this fact as the proof for the unchanging nature of ideas. What Plato means by ideas or forms is of such nature that the fact that pyramid can change and no longer be a pyramid is actually one of the greatest proof that the idea of the pyramid is unchanging. Because the idea of a pyramid is unchanging, when a pyramid gets destroyed, we see that this pyramid is no longer a pyramid, because the unchanging nature of what it means for something to be a pyramid remains unchanging. That particular pyramid is destroyed through change, and we see that it is no longer what it was. The reason for this recognition is the fact that the form or idea of what it means for something to be a pyramid no longer fits this particular object. The object itself changed, while the idea or form of what it means to be a pyramid is unchanging. So the fact that the object changed while idea of a pyramid remains unchanging is precisely the reason why object is no longer a pyramid. It does not reflect this idea or form anymore because it got destroyed through change, while idea of the pyramid is always what it is, and once the thing no longer reflects it, it is no longer defined by it, its being is no longer defined by this form or idea. This unchanging fact can be expressed in countless changing forms, and this does not make it changing. It simply means that this unchanging form or idea was expressed in countless different forms. Before these different changing forms became a pyramid, we recognize the exact time when it came into existence, and when it perished, because we recognize the form or idea that always is what it is, meaning the pyramid. Plato did not believe that reason is just a feature of the human soul. He believed that reason is an aspect of reality. It is as real as nature or the sea. It is literally real. Reason is a feature of reality, and ideas or forms are this rational part of reality that we participate in through our soul, because our soul is an expression of reality, and all features of reality are expressed within our soul. The rational or ideal, the animalistic or natural, which corresponds to spiritedness, and the chaotic, which corresponds to desire. In order to fully perceive the entire reality, we do not just need reason. Although reason is the only part of the soul that we can truly control and use properly, all the other parts of the soul work on their own will, more or less, while reason is our will. We need to use reason in order to properly bring the soul into harmony, and once we do this, we can raise our experience beyond the sensory realm, through the rational level of the Pythagorean sphere of mathematics and geometry, into a kind of ecstatic, rational, and intuitive experience of ideas themselves. We do not need to escape from reality. We can do this through our soul. Everything is here within the soul. When Plato says everything is within the soul, this does not mean that the soul is some supernatural entity that came from a different world. It simply means that the soul itself is a form. It is rational. It is what it is, and it can grasp the rational aspect of reality because it is its expression. It is reality, and reality is of the same nature as the soul, which is why the soul thinks. It is because reality thinks. Beauty is not some kind of mathematical proportion or definition. The idea of beauty can be expressed in billions of ways, in endless ways, through its changing character. However, what is beautiful, no matter what. There is this idea or archetype that defines it as beautiful, and it is unchanging. Not in the sense that all things that are beautiful contain the same unchanging mathematical definition, but in the sense that all things contain within themselves this ideal aspect that makes them beautiful. It is not a definition, it is just beauty, and that is it. It cannot be something else. It cannot be ugly, it is beautiful. This is all that Plato means by unchanging. The fact that beauty is unchanging just means that beauty is beautiful and not something else, like ugly for example. This is why I said at the beginning, all we need to know is explained when Plato says that form is defined by itself. It is not defined by other stuff or any kind of relationship. It just is what it is. It is explained by itself. This is not to say that various relationships do not make things beautiful. However, even if any kind of relationship does embody beauty, the relationship in itself as a concept is not the idea of beauty itself. Rather, this relationship would embody or reflect the idea of beauty. That is the beauty Plato is talking about. He is talking about the idea of beauty that this beautiful relationship reflects in its relations. In Plato's philosophy, everything is exactly as it appears. We do not decide how to define reality. reality defines itself and gives us information to see how it defined itself. Ideas are ideas, sensory information is sensory information, reason is reason, mind is mind, relationships are relationships, possibilities are possibilities, everything is as it is. If ideas are grasped by reason and not by the senses, then ideas are grasped by reason and not by senses. Idea is not something that is abstract or some kind of probability space. It is literally real as idea in reality of reason and mind, which are as real as the physical world. You must understand that in Plato's reality, mind and reason are features of reality. It is like your house. Physical world is the floor, while mind and reason is the ceiling. Ideal world is not in separate reality. It is in reality, and we can see it directly through the mind's eye. If I can see a pyramid in Egypt with my senses, this pyramid exists as sensory information. If I can contemplate another pyramid with the power of my mind, this pyramid that I contemplate with my mind exists in reality, just like that pyramid that I perceive with my senses. This does not mean that there are two worlds. Both of these pyramids, one in my mind and one in sensory world, are merged in a way that the sensory one is reflecting the form or idea that I am grasping in my mind. Plato just takes reality for what it is. If my mind can contemplate a pyramid, then this pyramid exists in reality. Because my mind has reason to contemplate, reality also has the realm of reason that can be contemplated as one of its aspects. If I can perceive the world with my senses, then the world has its sensory aspects that I can perceive. This does not mean that sensory world and mind world are two realities. They are one reality expressed as it is expressed, and we must take it for what it is. We must understand everything as simply and as literally as possible. If I imagine stuff, I imagine stuff. If I see stuff, I see stuff. If there is a thing, it is a thing. If there is a bunch of different things that share the same color, there is a bunch of different things that share the same color. Ideas are ideas. Senses are the senses. Probabilities are probabilities. Everything is as it is. And yes, reality is a combination of all of these aspects. But we also must understand that all these aspects are real in their own way and are experienced according to their nature. What all of them share is called being itself, which in Plato's philosophy is defined as form of the good, the highest idea and the source of thinking. So the form of the good is at the same time the source of ideas and mind, while the entire reality is an expression of this in all its different variations. Actually, it is more correct to say that the form of the good is not in itself being, it is the source of all being, but being is something that all existing things share, with form of the good being its source. Plato's reality is an ontological hierarchy of being, with eternal being and nothing or chaos at its extremes as two ends of the spectrum. The entire reality is happening between them. Some things are closer in hierarchy to being, and are thus more stable and permanent, while other things are further away, meaning closer to chaos, which makes them more disorderly, destructible, or unstable. All reality, both physical and mental, are of the same nature that comes from this mingling of being and chaos. However, all things that exist are infused with being, and this is what defines them, because being or form of the good is the source of forms, definitions, order, while chaos is a force of death, destruction, disorder. Ideas, like beauty, are the closest to being, and they have the strongest effect on reality, and their nature is always what it is. In other words, they are unchanging. They are direct expressions of being. Their being is what gives being to all reality that reflects their nature. Plato's reality is an ontological hierarchy which contains at its top extreme eternal, unchanging being, while the other extreme is chaos or nothing. In the middle is becoming. It comes from being, and it perishes into nothing. All of these are real and not separate. All of them are true at once as aspects of a single reality that we inhabit. There are no separated dimensions or other worlds. There are only aspects of reality and the place to which they belong within the hierarchy of being. Some aspects of reality are more concrete and persistent because their nature is closer to being, while other aspects of reality are further from being, which makes them less concrete, more temporary, and less persistent. Things that are closer to being are less destructible or perishable, while things that are closer to non-being, or further away from being, are more destructible and perishable. Ideas, or that which is closest to the source of all being, are defined by what they are. They are pure being, meaning their definition is defined by what they are, while other things that are lower expression of being are defined by their reflection or participation in being of ideas. The idea of beauty is defined by the fact that it is beautiful, and that is it. How this beauty is expressed in its finite form is changing. It can be expressed in countless ways, but the fact that it is beautiful is unchanging. If it is beautiful, it simply is. There is this being of what it means to be beautiful, and it is always beautiful. When it is not beautiful, we know, because beauty is that one thing that is always what it is. Even through its countless changing particular expressions, it is beautiful because of beauty, and that is it. The allegory of the cave is not about literally getting through an illusory world into some separate reality that is real. This is an anti-Platonic image of reality. This is not Plato. Plato is a hard realist. Everything is taken literally as it is experienced, and Plato believed that everything he said is how we literally experience it. Illusion is not happening because of reality, but because of our inability to understand it or see it in its fullness. To exit the cave does not mean to escape into another dimension. It means staying exactly where we are, but with more knowledge about reality and seeing reality with new eyes, or with a sight that goes beyond the surface into the universal aspect, or into pure being that gives existence to becoming. As Plato says in the Sophist, being and becoming are not two different things. They are both expressions of being. However, there is an aspect of each thing within becoming that contains within itself a power of being that defines it and is always what it is. Beauty cannot be ugly. If it is ugly, then it is ugly. These two are forms, ugliness and beauty, and this is what the unchanging aspect is. The unchanging aspect does not lie in the fact that each beautiful thing contains some clearly defined proportion. No, it simply contains beauty, and that is it. There is nothing else when it comes to beauty. It is unchanging. It is beauty. Of course, there are multiple aspects of each thing that make it beautiful, but beauty itself is the power, or the unchanging ideal aspect, that even through its change the thing expresses. The fact that a thing is beautiful, the unchanging aspect of its beauty, is the existence of beauty itself within its being. We must disregard all of its particular aspects. Yes, all of them participate in its beauty, but it is beautiful not because of one aspect or because of a combination of certain aspects. It is beautiful because it is beautiful, and that is it. All beautiful things are beautiful. This is what is unchanging. It is not the thing itself that is unchanging. The thing or object can be beautiful, and then it can change and become ugly. This happens because the thing or object changes, but beauty remains what it is. So when being of beauty is no longer reflected in being of a specific changing object, the object stops being beautiful. It stops reflecting the eternal unchanging being of the idea of beauty in its own particular being because of its change in relation to the unchanging nature of beauty that always remains what it is, beauty. The object is no longer beautiful because object changed while beauty remains beauty, so object does not reflect it any more. This is all that Plato means by unchanging form of beauty. It does not mean that it is defined as some kind of abstract mathematical object. It also does not mean anything but this single simple fact that beauty is simply beauty. That is it. No more thinking, we came to our answer. Beauty is simply what it is, and that's it. This is the idea of beauty. It is not somewhere outside of reality. It is in highest point of reality's hierarchy of being, and it is reflected in things that are lower on this hierarchy, which draw their existence from these upper parts that are closer to being. Ideas themselves, like beauty or justice, are in fact identical with being itself. They are on the top of the hierarchy, which is precisely why they can't be defined by anything else. Instead, they are defined by what they are, by the very nature of their being. And they also define other things that are lower on the ontological hierarchy, according to the nature of their being. But the point is that it is all one reality. Everything is merged together in a single reality that is in itself a hierarchy of being. Not separate physical or mental dimensions. The separation is ontological, nature of being, and epistemological, understanding or knowledge of this hierarchy. So Plato's separation is not literal separation in realms. The separation exists, but it is a separation on a deeper level. It is metaphysical, ontological, epistemological, but it is all here in front of us. When Plato describes different levels, these are not literal different realities. They are all one reality understood in various different ways according to various aspects of its nature. So when Plato speaks about the ideas or forms, He just speaks about the nature of being in its different aspects according to his hierarchy. Ideas are simply how being is defined in its different aspects. It is not supernatural. It is not other dimension or Platonic realm. Plato never said anything about Platonic realms ever. This was invented as a consequence of this misunderstanding. All Plato was ever writing about is the nature of reality. Upper and lower, eternal and finite, are not different realities. They are different aspects of being within the same reality. Plato was just describing these different aspects of reality from multiple philosophical perspectives. This is all he ever did. Not by inventing concepts, unknown dimensions, or mathematical realms, but just by looking at reality and trying to fit what he saw or grasped in a proper place within this reality. So he believed that entire reality is one big being that contains everything. Within this being, we have defined compartments or ideas of which each contains its own nature that defines it. All other things that are not ideas are defined by receiving their definitions or power of being from ideas, and that is the entire reality for Plato. It is as simple as that. Reality is being that is defined as various different ideas that define all other things as particular reflections of these ideas. Everything is within everything else. Higher parts of the hierarchy give being to the lower, and lower parts of the hierarchy are defined according to the higher. Not as higher or some hidden mathematical dimension of reality, but higher dimension according to the nature of its being, according to how it fits into this reality of being and its compartments that are defined by the nature of their being. Let us take beauty and ugliness. All things are somewhere between beauty and ugliness. Beauty and ugliness are ideas, and these ideas are what they are. They are not defined by mathematical proportions or by some kind of external definition. They simply are what they are. You must see past definitions. Beauty is beauty, and ugliness is ugliness. All things are one or the other, more or less. Beauty is unchanging not because some things are beautiful, but because beauty is what it is. It has a certain being, and when a thing is beautiful, it is not ugly. This is the unchanging aspect. Beauty is unchanging, not the beautiful thing. Even if a beautiful thing becomes ugly, this does not prove that beauty changed. It simply means that the beautiful thing became ugly. The fact that we can see that it is no longer beautiful is precisely what Plato means when he says that beauty is unchanging. Why can we recognize when a beautiful thing is no longer beautiful? It is because beauty is what it is, just like an ideal or archetypal aspect of a pyramid. When a pyramidal structure is broken and it is no longer a pyramid, we recognize that it is no longer a pyramid because the archetype, the ideal aspect, the shape, no longer embodies that ideal unchanging aspect that makes it what it is while it was a pyramid. The same is true with beauty. The idea of beauty is not in some other dimension. It is an idea that we grasp in the world. The fact that beautiful things in the world change and become ugly is precisely the proof that beauty is unchanging. It is what it is, and when it is reflected in a particular form, it is what defines that particular object as beautiful. I am not speaking about the objects. I am speaking about beauty. An object can become ugly and it is no longer beautiful, but we would recognize its beauty if it became beautiful again, because beauty is always beautiful, and it always provides beauty for objects that embody its ideal power. Many people say that Plato believed that beauty is unchanging because it is defined as some kind of mathematical proportion, or some similarly clearly defined concept that every beautiful thing shares in order to be beautiful. This is absurd. Plato never says that beauty is defined as some kind of mathematical concept, a perfect geometrical pattern, or anything of the sort. If you find me one single chapter where he says that the form of beauty is defined by some kind of proportion, I will reconsider everything I am saying here. I am not referring to the beautiful things in the world. These things contain the idea of beauty that defines them. I am speaking about the idea itself. Plato never defines the idea of beauty, and do you know why he does not do it? It is because beauty is defined by what it is and by nothing else. But when I say this, I already see that you are probably imagining some kind of concept of beauty that stands somewhere in the sky like a piece of furniture or something. This is not what Plato means. We must completely abandon all relationships and all other concepts. We must focus only on the idea of beauty. And I know, this is impossible if we remove all the other concepts and relationships. And yes, this is correct. But beauty is not a relationship. It is not an object. It is simply an idea, a meaning that can be expressed in countless different ways. So why did Plato say that beauty is unchanging? Wouldn't it mean that it is clearly changing if it can be expressed in multiple or countless forms, as we said? The answer is no. It does not mean that it is changing. It is still unchanging in its purely ideal form as beauty, not as an object, not as a relationship, but as beauty itself, as an idea, as a meaning. Yes, there are countless different beautiful things and various relationships between various different concepts in different environments, and they all share in being beautiful. And this is precisely what beauty is. It is that thing that all these reflect or embody. But if we reflect upon it, beauty is not one thing or the other. It is an idea that all of them share, a meaning. It is a kind of being that they reflect by embodying a certain kind of being. Objects and relationships are things that can be beautiful, and they can be beautiful because of the existence of beauty. Relationships and objects, or countless forms that express or embody beauty, all express a single thing. They all embody the idea of beauty, so they all share the same thing, the idea of beauty. If some of these lose their beauty and become ugly, they no longer embody beauty, because beauty is a specific idea that only beautiful things embody. This is why beauty is unchanging. This is what Plato means by unchanging. Beauty is unchanging because it is always of the same nature in the sense of being beautiful. This is the idea. The idea can be shared by countless changing relational objects, but the idea, the fact that they are beautiful or not, depends on whether they embody the power or share in the nature of the beautiful. Beauty is unchanging not because it is defined by some kind of rules or proportions. Beauty is defined as beauty and nothing else. It can be expressed in countless, and even more than countless, forms, and despite this, it is always of the same nature. But being of the same nature does not mean some clearly defined mathematical definition or proportion. It simply means that it is beautiful, and that is it. There is no more. The explanation is done. Beauty is unchanging because all beautiful things are always beautiful. When they stop being beautiful, they are no longer beautiful because we know what beauty is, and it is always what it is, which is beautiful. Therefore, it cannot be ugly. Beauty is unchanging only because it is always beautiful, and that is it. It is unchanging because its beauty is expressed only in beautiful things. It cannot be expressed in something that is not beautiful. This is what unchanging means, and countless expressions of change have no effect on beauty. Beauty is always what it is, and no matter how many things change, the things that are beautiful, and those that are not. This is what the unchanging part refers to. It refers to the fact that beauty is always beauty. Beauty is not ugliness or something else. It is what it is and is recognized as such, as an idea. No matter how many different changing forms express it, it is always what it is. Beauty, it is that simple. I always laugh when I see people on the internet explaining Platonic forms as some clearly defined separate dimension or mathematical supernatural sphere. There are also those who claim it is some kind of relational probability or possibility space that contains many future possibilities. These are always people that use additional information or some kind of interpretation from everyone else except from Plato himself. This is so non-obvious and so obscure that I simply cannot believe people come to such an obscure conclusion. Plato's conclusion, by contrast, is the simplest simplicity. It is literally what appears to be, the most simple thing of all. Beauty is beauty because it is beauty, and it is not ugliness or something else. It is not unchanging because it is always expressed as the same mathematical proportion or something of this sort. It is unchanging because beautiful things are beautiful, and that is it. It is that simple. Even if different beautiful things are completely different from one another, and even if they change all the time, if they embody beauty, they are beautiful because beauty is always beautiful, and this is the part that is unchanging. Maybe people get confused because of Plato's grandiose mythological language, when he uses various religious images describing higher states of the soul and divine intelligence. Yes, Plato believes that this is all divine, but he sees it in this simple and literal way. There are no obscurities or different realms. The divine realm for Plato is what is most ordinary, things that are most obvious and most ordinary are the highest and most sacred truths. Precisely for this reason, people in their ignorance invent all kinds of obscurities in order to deceive themselves and keep looking at the shadows on the wall, afraid of exiting the cave and seeing the truth that is not in some supernatural realm, but right in front of our eyes. Plato believes that ideas are reality, they exist within reality, and things in reality embody or reflect the power of this ideal realm. However, the ideal realm is not some other dimension, it is right here, but at the same time it is of a different nature. It is not directly perceptible by the senses, but its power is contained in every single sensible object. Every single object has multiple archetypal or ideal qualities that it expresses, and these qualities are always what they are. This is what Plato means by unchanging. Ideas are what they are. It is not meant in the sense that an idea is like a thing that exists at some place and is always the same in its construction. It simply means that it is always of the same nature. Beautiful is beautiful, and it is not ugly. This is what the unchanging part refers to. Ugliness is ugly, and that is it. Now this ugliness can be expressed in endless different ways, and we will always recognize the ugliness in all these different expressions. In every countless expression, we can recognize ugliness. But why is this the case? Because ugliness is what it means to be ugly. Ugly is unchanging. It is always ugly. Once the ugly thing becomes beautiful, it is no longer ugly, because ugly is always ugly. If the thing is no longer ugly, it expels this power of ugliness from itself, and we can recognize it because ugliness is always of an ugly nature. There is a nature to what it means when something is ugly, and it is always ugly. Once it is not ugly, we recognize it as not ugly, because ugliness can only exist as ugliness. It is unchanging in its ugly nature. This is what Plato means by ideas that are grasped by the mind and are unchanging. The unchanging part does not refer to objects in reality. It refers to the ideas that these objects embody, the archetypal power that these objects embody. This archetypal power is always of the same nature, and this same nature can be expressed in an endless number of ways. The idea is unchanging in a sense that it always shares in its own kind. If I could recommend you a dialogue where Plato explains the nature of being, it is Dialogue Sophist. Each form is its own kind, and it is always of the same nature or kind, and when we say forms are unchanging, people take it literally as clearly defined thing or concept in some kind of higher mathematical definition. But Plato does not define the forms, he just says that they are what they are, and nothing else. This is the only definition that he gives in all dialogues combined. He says that they are unchanging in respect to their kind or nature. This is the only definition that he ever provides when speaking about the forms. So this is what it means to say that forms are defined by what they are, by always sharing in its own kind. Beauty is always beautiful. This is what Plato refers to. Only this is logical. It is the only position that makes sense. He literally never defines forms in any other way than by saying that they are what they are. This is what people mistake when Plato says forms are unchanging. They think that each form must be the same, and it is true that it is the same, but it is not the same in the sense of a material object, it is the same in its ideal, archetypal sense. This one idea, or one unchanging ideal, can be expressed in endless different ways. No matter the fact that beauty can be expressed in endless different changing ways, all these changing ways contain that ideal archetype of beauty that is what it is. It does not matter that beauty is expressed in countless changing forms. All these forms contain beauty that is always what it is. Once they lose beauty, they no longer embody its form, because the form of beauty is always beauty, and once the thing is no longer beautiful, it does not embody beauty any longer. This is what the unchanging forms means. If beauty could change its nature, things that are beautiful in one moment could be ugly in another by being exactly the same as when they were beautiful a moment ago, because beauty changed. However, since beauty is of unchanging nature and always remains what it is, things that reflect it remain beautiful as long as they maintain their reflection of beauty. Once they change to the point at which they no longer reflect beauty, they are no longer beautiful because beauty is always of the same nature. This is the only and specific part of the theory that Plato refers to when he says what forms are, how are they defined, and why they maintain their nature forever. even while not being reflected anywhere at all. So even if, let's imagine, reality itself disappears completely, a new reality comes into existence after billions of years, this new reality will necessarily reflect some specific forms like beauty or simply a shape like a pyramid, if it is to be beautiful or if it is to have their own pyramids. This is what form means. It is pure meaning that is eternally what it is, no matter whether it is reflected or not. Now, whether Plato's definition is scientifically or philosophically acceptable or not is not what we are discussing here. I was just trying to clarify this single point that I constantly see as something that people criticize from a standpoint of a complete misunderstanding.